So I'll show you with 2 blocks, and then I'll show you with no blocks. It's pretty much the same thing. The thing that is exactly the same whether you're on 1, 2, no blocks, is the belt. And that's just going to go around your sacrum, which is the bony plate between the buttock flesh, around your sacrum. And then you do it up. If you've got one of these sort of yoga belts, then of course the buckle will be adjusted. It's a locking buckle. There are different types. If you've got a D ring, it goes through both and then back through one. And we're simply putting it around the knees, around the shins, like a proper yogapaṭṭa. Takes a bit of time to get it just right. Yogapaṭṭa, of course, is a yoga belt used in exactly this way for, well, we can find evidence of them for 2,000 years. So once you got it right, it should support your legs. You can sit in sukhasana, palms up. The first evidence of a yogapaṭṭa is in a Mula Savastavad in their monastic code, in their Vinaya. There's evidence there that a monk takes a bit of his robe, rips off a bit of his robe, and then uses it as a yogapaṭṭa like this. And after that, we have so much evidence of them. It's unbelievable. So much so that oftentimes when you see a yogi, you know it's a yogi because they've got a yogapaṭṭa on. That's how you know it's a yogi. So hopefully you've been able to get that positioned right for yourself. Some people just joining now, welcome. Those just joining, we're sitting on 1 or 2 blocks with a yogapaṭṭa, a yoga belt. And I've mentioned you can use a dressing gown belt. I won't do my very funny joke that I did before about whether or not you have a dressing gown belt. If you want to hear that funny joke, you'll have to listen to the recording. But it was a very good joke indeed. The yogapaṭṭa is placed around the sacrum, around the knees. There's a bit of precision placement, which is good for the morning anyway. And the palms face up. So this is about as traditional as it gets. It's almost as old as yoga itself, or at least yoga as is overtly named yoga in the Katha Upanishad, which is about 2,200 years. Well, the yogapaṭṭa probably is as old as that, probably older. The only reason we can't say for sure that it's older is because there's no textual evidence to back that up. But, you know, the fact we find it 50 years before the Common Era mentioned in a text, I don't think they just invented it there in that text. So we'll sit for a couple of more moments waiting for those who've just come in, but also giving those that are already in the yogapaṭṭa the experience of support. This is even mentioned in the commentaries to Patanjali's Yoga Sutra on the famous aphorism Sthira Sukha Asanam, which is where he talks about ease and poise in a posture. The commentaries, including fairly early commentaries, list different poses that you can sit in a still and peaceful way. And one of them is overtly the use of the yogapaṭṭa. So a few more breaths at least here, because of course the yogapaṭṭa is used as an aid to physical absorption because the body is supported. The pressure of the knees against the belt pulls the sacrum in and helps to keep the back upright. It takes a bit of time to get used to the yogapaṭṭa. It reveals tensions that we hold, the selfing that we do. Like I must be doing something, but we don't need, the belt will hold you entirely. So let go of the adductors, let go of the buttocks, let go of the shoulders, let go of the shoulder blades. The spine will naturally, as it releases, find its uprightness. And your breath will find its ease And the mind, of course, will follow. Years later, in the 1960s, of course, BKS Iyengar innovates, he believes, the yoga belt into modern postural yoga after seeing a belt on a luggage strap. And just by sort of some kind of coincidence, he really brings that in, and some of his ideas around the yoga belt do fit in with some of the traditional ideas about a yoga belt. So that's, testimony to his honesty and creativity, actually. Bring your hands to your heart. Breathing through your nose. Yogapaṭṭa, by the way, is P-A-T-T with the dot underneath each T. Paṭṭa and then A, obviously. Interlace your fingers, stretch your arms diagonally. Breathe through your nose. Raise the arms up. Light tone in the tummy. Make sure your head doesn't project forwards, which you can do as an act of self, like I mustn't do that. Where's my notes on yoga? I must follow my notes. I must do what the others. That's one way. It's not as good as surrendering. And when you surrender, as it were, to the goddess, as it were, the spine comes upright, because surrendering to the goddess is letting go of tension. Tension drives distortions in the body. It's natural for the spinal column to be upright. It's natural for us to feel ease. It's sort of unnatural for us to superimpose habitual patterns, but we do it, and, unnatural in the sense that it's not the most sort of, when you strip everything away, it's not what remains, you see. Big wide circle, good job. Hands resting back in jnana mudrā. Couple of deep breaths, wiggle your fingers, change the cross of the legs. So much iconography features the yogapaṭṭa. Again, it takes a little bit of precision placement. Be patient. It's part of yoga too, isn't it? Kshanti in Sanskritam means patience. And obviously, you can tighten it. If you've got a locking belt, that's quite useful. So one of the things in Vajrasati yoga that we use the yoga belt for is to reveal that which might be concealed. That is to say, gripping, grasping, grabbing, the three gurs, as I call them, the three gurs. And we now have a book with paintings, and one of the paintings, but it's not published because I don't really know how to publish a book. But I've got one on my computer ready to go, if you know any publishers. But it's just aphorisms and pictures, this particular book. It's not the book. There's another book after that, which is done as well, which is, that one's slightly longer. It's like the aphorisms unzipped. And then there's the third one, that's the big one. And the fourth book is on practice, and that will complete the series. Anyway, in the first one that's done, completely done, there's a painting of three bears, and the aphorisms are just single lines. So this mentions the gripping, grasping, grabbing. And the reason I wanted it as three bears is because although gripping, grasping, grabbing isn't something we want to follow, the way to not follow gripping, grasping, and grabbing isn't to be aggressively opposed to them, but to be nice to them. Like bears are cute. But they could cause you problems if you're sort of too close to them. If you have a rope that binds you to the bear, neither you nor the bear is going to like that. So anyway, letting go, gripping, grasping, grabbing, that's one of the things the belt helps with. Bring our hands to the heart center. So it reveals where we are, gripping, grasping, grabbing, where we're holding unnecessary muscle tension. Interlace the fingers. Stretch the arms diagonally down. Raise the arms up. When you get about 3/4 of the way, that's your opportunity to see for yourself, ehipassiko, ehipassana, to see for yourself the connection between mind and body. That's not even connection, the oneness. Mental attitude is physical expression, expresses itself immediately, physically. Right? And respiratory, it's yoga's surrender. Yoga is not something you can kind of come along with your pockets full of samskaras and expect to keep them in your pockets. You know, yoga is nadi shuddhanam. It's clearing through all the nerves, cleansing through all the nerves, wiping the slate clean, emptying out, becoming available, opening up. So giving is the immediate solution to your problems. We can talk as we go along about why that is. Come through a big, wide circle to release. Palms up. 3 or 4 expressive deep breaths. Giving to the field is the immediate release of your problems. Okay, give your fingers a little wiggle. And we're going to release ourselves from the yogapaṭṭa, although traditionally one would not for quite a long time. But we will. Now, depending on the length of the belt, we're going to have 2 options. If you've got a long belt and you're not particularly long of limb, then we're going to open it up to a big old loop. And you'll understand why I say it's got to be a long belt. You lay on your back, place a foot in the loop. It goes around your upper back. And actually, you know, a lot of belts are quite long. I'm lucky enough to have these very long belts. So that's a great way to place yourself. If the belt's not long enough, obviously you can double it up or simply not do that and instead use the belt as a sort of set of stirrups that goes around your foot like that. So you've got like a loop, and then you place your hands in the stirrups, as it were. I'll just put the microphone to the side. It sometimes distorts when you put it on your back. So either way, either of those 2 methods, if you've got it round your back and round your foot, obviously that's a little different to if you've got it just around your foot, but it's the same pose in principle. Breath is everything. It's still a yogapaṭṭa. It's not, this is the BKS Iyengar way of using a paṭṭa. You know, he definitely did innovate this kind of usage. Of course, he didn't call it a yogapaṭṭa. He had no prior knowledge of what the yogapaṭṭa is or was. You can hold the strap if you've got it around your back, or your foot or leg if you're fairly flexible in the hamstrings. I think it's nice to place it around the front of the heel. It's not, you know, it's not a deal breaker, but I prefer it a little bit. But you might prefer somewhere else. So you can hold the strap, you can have your hands behind your thigh. If you've got short legs, long arms, you might hold your foot. Well, the breath comes and goes. And of course, if you're using just the belt as a sort of like stirrups for your fingers to rest into, then that's where your hands are there. The other leg then raises up. There's a moment where your lower back gets closer to the floor. There's a moment where your lower back gets closer to the floor. Notice that moment, breathe into it. Neck soft. Lower back soft. Then we're going to extend that lower leg to about 45 degrees. Now, at this point, those of you who've got the belt around your back and your leg could stretch your arms over your head as well if you wanted to. I quite like doing that, but it does require tone in the tummy. Breath should come and go naturally, and the neck should release tension. It doesn't need tension in this posture. Obviously, if you're holding the belt by your hands and it's not around your back, then you'll have to keep hold of it. flex back that leg, catch a breath or two. Deep breaths. Then releasing and releasing and swapping, which is straightforward in either iterations of this variation of using the belt. It's easy with the belt around your feet and back. It's easy with it just around your feet, just swap over. Once you're on your back with the belt, take 3 or 4 deep breaths. Right. So remind you that you can use a dressing gown belt or a judo belts are pretty good. I know this because for several years, when I first started teaching yoga, I was completely skint. I'm not that much better now, actually, but you know, I've got a house that, so that's quite good. It's very good. But anyway, I was complete skint, so I didn't have any yoga equipment really to speak of. Some mats I had, some blocks, but I bought the yoga belts. I went to car boot sales and I got ties and I got dressing gown belts and I got judo belts if I could find them. And I ended up with quite a big bag over months of all these different things. It became quite an attachment, actually. When you're ready, raise the other foot, and there you get that moment where your lower back's close to the floor. Give yourself to it. How do you give? The breath is the method of giving. So we say no or we say yes in yoga and in life through our breath. You'll notice that. Perhaps you could even sort of, as a little project, a mini project today, you could notice the times when you say no, the times when you say yes, with your breath. Maybe somebody comes into the staff canteen and you don't really like that person much and they talk to you and your breath will be saying no. But if you wanted, you could change it to yes if it seemed appropriate by breathing into it. Maybe your resistance to that person is well-founded and it's safe to keep them at arm's length and right, but maybe not. Maybe they're just, you know, not as cool as you'd like them to be or something. And that, you know, maybe you could open up to them. Anyway, experiments with the breath. Now we're going to extend the lower leg as before to about 45 degrees. Some people, like me, like to stretch the arms over the head when they're using a belt like this. The lower back obviously has to be close to the floor, has to be intimate to the floor. The neck should be soft, the breathing should be deep. When the neck's not soft, of course, the chin moves back towards the forehead, which we don't want. We want to maintain something of a Jalandhara Bandha, the chin and chest proximity, not a full Jalandhara Bandha, but we certainly don't want its opposite. Okay, well done. Flex back. Good job. Bring your foot down, release the belt from around your foot. Take a breath. 2, 3, 4 or more, or 5, 6 or 76. And then roll over when you're ready. Then come up from the side. Good job, everybody. Now, if your belt's long enough, we're going to come into Dandasana with... Sorry, I'll take the microphone back. If the belt's long enough, we're going to come into Dandasana, perhaps sitting on a block or perhaps not, using the belt in pretty much the same sort of way that it's used like we used it in Sukhasana, that is to draw the sacrum in. But again, you have to have quite a long belt for this, so you can do this beltless, as it were. But it just goes around your feet and around your sacrum. And it really just depends how long the belt is and how long your legs are. You can use 2 belts if you need to. It's around the sacrum. I want to reiterate that, and not the lower back. And it should be fairly tight or taut, not tight, because if it's too tight, it presses your feet together. And on a block or not, hopefully you've drawn the buttock flesh out and back, or you will be drawing the buttock flesh out and back. You got it. As normal for Dandasana, the hands will be by your sides, fingers facing forwards. breath through the nose. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. The drawing in of the sacrum is met by a subtle drawing in and up of the tummy. Subtle here means, well, it means what it sounds like. Sukshma, subtle. Jaw soft, eyes soft, throat soft, tongue soft, brain soft. Shoulders back, chest up. Just keeping the belt, just if you're using a belt, you don't have to, it can be too complicated sometimes to faff around with one, but if you are, it's just keeping the sacrum forward. You've got to keep your chest up. That's your job. So go on, lift it up. And then tone the tummy. Shoulders back to stretch the pectoralis. Breathe through your nose. Eyes soft, brain soft, throat soft, tongue soft. Breathe through your nose. Okay, this for me is just not really nice. I want to stay here quite a while. I'm a big fan of Dandasana anyway. There's so many things, so many refinements you can make. There's no reason for the mind to drift. But the body can drift investigatively and look for lightness. Laghu, L-A-G-H-U, laghu. Lightness is the same as openness. It's the same as emptiness. It's the same as non-attachment. All these different phrases you find in the yoga tradition. It's quite useful if we realize that they're synonyms. Then we can understand the meaning. Okay, nice and easy release. Well done, gang. Now, I suppose we should really be done with the yogapaṭṭa now, but I can't resist one more thing. I mean, we could go on the whole class, but we won't. We'll just do one more thing, and that is to bring the yogapaṭṭa around the upper arms. I'm just going to get the cat off the work surface. Just doing a little raid there. He does raids when I'm teaching yoga because he thinks that I'm too busy to stop him, but he's wrong. Anyway, the belt goes around your elbows, quite precisely actually around the elbows like that, for down face dog. So you can place it, and then we'll come into down face dog. I'll just supervise the cat a little bit. So when you're ready, I'm just off screen supervising the cat, excuse me. He wants a little bit more breakfast. That's why he's raiding. You come into down face dog as normal, with the belt around those elbows. Put biscuits out from outside. And then the same, check your hands are equidistant from the front and sides of the mat, pushing from front to back. Sorry about this domestic moment. It's quite greedy. And playing as you would normally in Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. I'm back with you now. Sorry about that. So depending on your body, the belt will need to be quite taut. It really is a sort of reminder to move the energy up rather than out, right? So whenever the belt, whenever you sort of slack off on the belt, the energy doesn't move. But if you keep the belt taut, you're pressing against the belt, just a little bit taut, and then stretch the inner armpits. Some schools of yoga call that the armpit chest, the inner armpit to the groins. The groins themselves rise up on both sides, the inner groins and the front groins. And the chest opens, really opens. So sometimes when you see yogis with this sort of rounded lower back, this indication that they're not really opening the central channel,
but over-focusing at the expense of the central channel on getting the heels down and actually breaking one of the yoga principles, which is a steya, not taking from or not stealing. And we're stealing, in a sense, from the place where the goddess dances, the central channel, if we close it down in yoga. So we want it to be open. Okay, well done. Come down. You've been there a while. You've been there quite a long time, actually, because I did all that cat stuff. Sitting in Vajrasana. Now I'm going to have to discipline myself and put the belt to one side now, because I just want to keep using the belt, but I mustn't. So I've thrown it away from myself to stop me. We're just going to rest our hands one on top of the other. Breathing through the nose, jaw soft, eyes soft. Shoulders soft. The natural breath comes and goes. The natural breath. So this Vajrasana, beautiful pose. Good. From there, we're going to bring ourselves up to standing. And we're going to bring ourselves into what I call Kayotsarga. Now, Kayotsarga, I'm taking the term principally from Jainism. Here we're going to have the feet apart, the feet facing straight ahead, not turned out or in. So you align your feet by using the midline of each foot, right? Let me rephrase that. A midline that you imagine running through each foot, running through the gap between the second and third toe and out the middle of the heels. Those imagined midlines are what you use to line your feet up, not the insteps or the outsteps. Feet at hip width, which you can ascertain from your greater trochanters by pushing them out to the side and straight down from there. Now, the reason I call it Kayotsarga is simply because in Jaina or the Jains iconography, it's not uncommon to find one of their Tirthankaras, as they're often known. They're sometimes known as arahants or arahats as well, like the Buddha, sometimes even on rare occasions as Buddhas, just as Buddhas are sometimes known in rare occasions as Tirthankaras. Same thing, anyway, the liberator in the Jain tradition. They stand like this, in this pose that is called Kayotsarga, which means kaya, which is body. Ut is like utsarga, casting off. So, of course, that has a certain meaning within the Jain context, which we could explore, but we'd need much longer. But I've, without completely stripping it of the connection it has with Jainism, and still keeping some connection, I think. I'm using the phrase to mean casting off the body as a thing that you believe in as a thing, right? There's the body, there's the mind, there's the breath, there's the rest of the universe. So we're casting off the body, the concept, the body, and experiencing what this really is: body, brain, breath, universe. So moving around can help because we're tuning out, tuning in, tuning out of the divided universe, tuning into the undivided universe. I know that all sounds a bit sort of like a lyric from a space rock song, but it's just the way things are. We create division necessarily. With areas like the parietal lobe of the brain, we create this division as a convenient construct. Philosophers and neuroscientists call that second order reality. First order reality is interdependent. Second order reality is the reality we project for convenience sake. It's very useful that we delineate you and me and, you know, good and bad. It's useful, but it's not true. Or it's true, but it's not ultimately true.
So hopefully you're still moving and tuning out / tuning in. And you can recognize one from the other, because tuning in is absorbing. The purpose of yoga is, of course, absorption. And we're absorbed in the field. That means we start to feel the interrelationships intuitively, because you can't do it by thinking, for reasons that are obvious if you think about it. Okay, let your palms start to turn forwards and breathe easy. And then let them start to drift up and out, a bit like you're in a musical. And keep the roots of the neck soft. The tummy should tone up as your arms raise up in response, because we want to feel the lower back tissues are long, really long. The muscle tissues of the quadratus lumborum, for example, should feel like you're lengthening them. Tummy remains toned, roots of the neck remain soft. We're still in service, seva, S-E-V-A, seva, to flow, which expresses everywhere, not least in the breath. Right? Now press your feet, raise your fingers on the inhale. On the exhale, bend your ankles, knees, and hips, and allow for playful movement. That playful movement has many purposes. Always the purpose is absorption, but we can describe this accurately using more conventional terminology to please the conventional mind as well, accurately please it, like the fact that movement helps to melt myofascia, helps to hydrate myofascia, helps to usurp habituated patterns in muscles, helps to circulate blood and therefore warmth, and that helps muscles to become softer. There's a long list of accurate convincers for the conventional mind. Stand up, big circle, hands to hips. Stand like a superhero. So sometimes the inner and the outer experience are different, aren't they? Like this posture, it's not particularly British, is it, to stand in this sort of super confident posture. So you might notice, might not, but you might notice if there's a contrast between the inner and the outer shape and the inner shape, as it were. The shape of the habits in the nervous system and the shape of the posture. Alignment means the two match. So to get alignment in yoga, we want the inner experience to fill the outer experience, which is a challenge because we're habituated to being, if you're very British, you'll be habituated to being relatively meek and fairly apologetic. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not that you should be this sort of confident, but it's good to have flexibility, that we're not stuck with this inner shape, this sort of story, the kalpa. So hopefully you're spending time, letting go of the clinging to an inner shape and letting yourself become a bit more of a shapeshifter in a way. The very famous story in very early Mahayana Buddhism is about a teacher who could change his shape, not physically, but sort of the way he acted, and so he could mingle with all people and teach them the Dharma. It's called the Vimala Kirti Nidarsha, the text. Vimala Kirti means it's like without stains and famous. Vimala, without stains, Kirti, famous. Okay, step your feet apart. So stains means fixed habits. Like if stain is something that's fixed in your clothing, right? It's like, damn it, I've got a coffee stain or whatever. So we're trying to cleanse the system so it doesn't, so we become vimala. Back toes in, front foot and leg turns out. On the ball of the foot, finish off the turn on the heel, ready for Trikonasana. Have a look between the feet, and then another look. And then when you raise your arms, just feel how the rib cage lifts.
and how your tummy hopefully naturally responds with tone. Inhale, exhale. Feel the back of your leg supporting the front of your leg, the back of your leg coming in to support the front of your leg. I like to move pretty slow for my first Trikonasana of the day. This is my first Trikonasana of the day, as well as I presume yours. Breath is everything. I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but you can enjoy this if you want. Just reflect on that for a moment, what I said. In fact, the truth is you can really enjoy it if you want. You can totally enjoy it if you want. You can even enter into complete bliss if you want. What do you think of those ideas? You might not want to. You might be the kind of person like, no, bliss, that's not for me. That's not my cup of tea. Bliss, no thanks. Come on up. Hands on the hips. Breathing, feet face forwards. Deep breaths. So we sort of feel the breath. Sometimes it's like a big spoon that's beginning to stir the porridge. It's a metaphor. I haven't used that metaphor in my book. I'm not sure why. It's very good. Porridge with lumps in it. The lumps I'm comparing to the grunties, the energy blockages, usually associated with chakras, but also across the whole body. Back toes in, front foot and leg out. So what are energy blockages? They're just habituations. They're just areas that you tend to get fixed on, stuck on. We could call it the areas that you get triggered. That's a modern parlance of it, isn't it? Stretch the arms. So that's what a grunty is. It's just sort of something you can't quite, damn it, I've got caught on that again, you know? Something you're susceptible to getting caught on. But breathing stirs the pot of porridge and begins to stir out the grunties and leaves the mind open. Inhale, exhale. Raise your arm and come down. Back of the leg towards the front of the leg, and the front of the leg sort of glides up like the way lava moves. And it's there's a sort of slowness. I know probably none of us have seen lava in real life. I have once. I went to Mount Bromo in Java. But I didn't see it flowing. I just saw it as a red glow in the bottom of a volcano. But when you see it flow on the television, then it kind of moves quite slowly and almost folds over itself. So that's the movement of your leg, right? It's got that, but that's a response in turn to the depth from the back of the leg. That sort of flowing up is stimulated by what's happening at the back of the leg. And then enjoy. Now, enjoyment isn't a sort of indulgence. It's an indicator that you're giving, because bliss does arise from giving. What is that bliss? It's the bliss of relief of the problems that a person has that are dissolved immediately when that person is gone. Problems need a person. That's what they stick to. If there's no person, they'll move on, right? Where's the person gone? Absorbed. Inhale, come on up. Hands to the hips, feet face forwards. Walk your feet towards each other. So I'm a big fan of Radiohead and Tom York, and you bring your legs together and just stretch out. And one of his lines is, "For a minute, I lost myself." I think that's on OK Computer. Always moved me so much just to hear that, because it's like, oh yes, for a minute I lost myself. Bring your feet together. Spread them out, hands on your hips, like you're it's quite challenging to have your hands on your hips, I think. Because if you walked into a room with your hands on your hips, you'd be quite a presence, wouldn't you, in the room? So there's a confidence. But again, that external shape can challenge the habituation. It's not what we're habituated to that's a problem. It's the habituation. It's not that a meek, mild character is in any way unnecessary at times. Sometimes it's the right thing. But being stuck in it is the problem. Having no flexibility. We want to be Vimala, like Vimala Kirti, without stains, without being caught. Now raise up your right heel and feel into your left foot. You can move forwards and backwards to do it. If that helps, it helps me. We know there are 3 arches to each foot. It's really enjoyable, to me anyway, to take as long as it takes to lose time and bring them online. And of course, calmness is what conditions connection. You want to connect to those foot arches. Impatience will it will disconnect you. Struggle will disconnect you. Trying will disconnect you. Calmness, conditions connection. Continue when you're ready to raise your leg, and we're going to come into Vrikshasana. Like the yogapaṭṭa, Vrikshasana is one of the things we find, one of the rare things we find in modern postural yoga that has a long history in classical Indian yoga. Similarly to the yogapaṭṭa, at least 2,000 years. Right? Well, at least 2,200 years actually, but almost certainly, I'd happily bet hundreds and thousands of pounds if I had them on the fact it's considerably older than that. You know, the first time it's written about, to my knowledge anyway, is in Strabo's Geographica, 150 before Common Era. But he in turn was writing based on stories he'd heard about when Alexander the Great was in India and had witnessed these practitioners doing this practice. So that was around 350 before Common Era. And just because the Greeks mention it doesn't mean that the Indians started doing it because the Greeks were there. They'd obviously been doing it quite a while before. Anyway, quite a while is the amount of time that one would traditionally stand. And I hope my story has given you something to focus on. Now release your hands, place your foot, catch your breath, because 9 times out of 10 we're holding it deeply, expressively, really let go. Come on, let go. You can do it in a British stuffy way, or you can get all Californian about it. I don't know how to do the Californian thing because I'm a bit British and stuffy, but you might, whatever, like, woohoo. I don't know how to do the Californian thing. It doesn't come out right. Anyway, when you're ready, second side, so raise up the other heel, feel into those 3 foot arches. Remember the 3 C's. Like we've got the 3 gurus, we have 3 C's as well: calmness, conditions, connection. The 3 C's. So we want connection to the 3 foot arches, so we use the 3 C's. Calmness, conditions, connection. The medial arch, the lateral arch, the transverse arch. Medial is the one most people know about. Some people's medial arches are pronated or collapsed. The yoga can really help bring them back online, and that can help your knee health, your hip health, and your back health. And the lateral arches, well, they're just a mirror image really of the medial. And the transverse goes across the foot towards the front. So I would relish the opportunity, the timelessness, the lack of sort of pressure to get things done, to spend as long as I wanted, just have nothing else to do for days and days, just to explore, getting online, as it were, parts of the body like the foot arches, and to notice the meditative attitude that helps that become a reality. When ready, raise up, heel into thigh, hands to the heart. Good job.
Breathing through the nose. It's just such a favorite of mine. I hope you get as much as I do. I'm sure you do. Really brings our whole being online. Whereas being offline here means that the body is being run by usually subconscious programs that are often not relevant to current circumstances. They may have been set up at a time when they were relevant, and then we get stuck in those programs. Sometimes an injury, sometimes an emotional, difficult time, and you adopt a behavior, but then that behavior becomes ingrained, some of them at childhood, of course. So this is great because it challenges all those behaviors and demands that we come online, as it were. It challenges some scars. That's exactly why the original practitioners did it as well, but for very long periods of time, to challenge some scars so that their karmic behavior pathways begin to fill in. They're not affirming any karmic behavior pathways. Okay, good job. Release, wiggle, stretch, breathe. Wiggle, stretch, breathe. And we're going to come into Uttanasana. So many people will find using a block very, very useful for this, because we want to keep open here to here, right? From the top of the thighs, through the pelvis, through the tummy and chest, this whole area, right? So at no point do we fold over the navel. The navel area stays as open as it is now. So having blocks for your hands, super useful. The feet themselves are generous hip width apart. And again, we use the midline of each foot to line that up. So I like to spend time spreading the toes. What happens in the feet happens in the legs. So spend as long as you need to. The inner groins do open in this, as like down face dog. There's a lot of similarities, actually. The front groins open, the gluteal creases deepen. There's a release, meditative, aka absorbed release of the psoas, which requires not trying but letting go. Raise your arms and let go. So this total, blissful, loving surrender, right? And still to this day, I'm baffled why this isn't more common in yoga, to find people talking, when they're talking about body work, to talk about how important the emotional tone is to how the body responds. So attitude, bhavana. So look for attitudes of total release and the body will totally release. No brainer. Inhale, lift from the groins then. Exhale, keep the groins open. Look for that. Is a devoted sense of space, and you fold down probably to your blocks, which can be any height. I've got blocks, I could have them like that. Possibly straight down to the floor. But it's unlikely, because most of us, if we do go straight down to the floor with flat hands, we'll find that we have folded over the navel, which we don't want to do. We want to keep open anteriorly, so we give ourselves as much height as we need for that. So this position, whether your hands are on the floor or on the blocks, where the spine is parallel to the floor, is the first station of Uttanasana. It's like a sort of Ardha Uttanasana in some way. And we breathe into it. Other stations follow not by our intention or will, but simply through our listening. If the body releases, and you can stimulate its release by moving. I like to lift my heels. I don't know if that works for you. Sometimes my toes. Again, movement hydrates the myofascia. Then sometimes the lower back dips, right? Whether you're on blocks or the floor, dips downwardly, which is good. And you can let it dip, and it should dip. If it dips and dips and dips and dips and dips, which is possible but not massively likely, then
some people, you at that time will feel more comfortable to move with it. So you keep the dip, but it doesn't dip ad infinitum. So in that case, one might lower the blocks, one might fold further. Unfortunately, it's very hard for the human mind to hear further without hearing better, but they're totally different words. Further is not a value judgment here. There's lots of instances you can say, you know, I'm really hungry, but I'm further from my dinner than, you know, I'd like to be. It's not a good thing there, is it? So further is just further. It's not better necessarily.
So movement and breath.
It can come to pass for some that movement's gone so far that it's worth holding the elbows. Often that's not the case. Often people hold the elbows prematurely. They're better off keeping the anterior spine open. But you can do that if you want. Okay, now coming up, we're going to bend our knees until our ribs touch the thighs. Make physical contact. And then let your head go. Once you've got physical contact with your ribs and your thighs, let your arms go, let your head go. Really nice release along the back. Quite strong for the legs, but they can take it. Then bending the knees a bit more, bring your hands up onto your thighs just above your knees. Straighten and lock your elbows. Take some deep breaths. And continue your upwards journey in your own time. Keeping the energy, feeling like the energy is kind of dropping down like marbles in the game of Kaplunk. Energy is going down, it's going down to the feet. And then you can stand in yogapaṭṭa for a moment. Deep breathing, soft eyes, soft jaw, soft brain. We're going to stand in Tadasana. That is with the feet close or together. It's better to keep them apart if you're pregnant. It's better to keep them apart if your thighs come together before your feet. But if they come together without those conditions, then together or close. Drop your shoulders. How much are you trying? That's okay. Don't try to not try. And don't try to not try. See how it's called samsara? Cycling round and round. Instead, have faith. Shraddha. In what? In giving. To what? The field. What kind of field? Interdependent field. Where is it? Everything is it. How can you find it? Use anything. Like a trail of breadcrumbs. If everything is it, like every particle is part, every electron is part of the electron field. So you find an electron, you can find the field. It is the field, it's part of the field. Particle physicists tell us the same. There aren't ultimately any particles, only fields. Take breaths. Let expression happen. Karana Shakti Svatona Bhavat. Notice if the body drifts to one side. Don't fight it, but just let the information be there, and the body will explore what it's like to be twisted. And slowly it will correct itself. Naturally, rather than it being superimposed in a way that the nervous system hasn't really understood. And so you'll just keep going back to square one. To realign the body truthfully, the body has to release the habits that keep driving it into misalignment. And for that, we need to fully open up. Take time. Bring the hands to the heart center.
We're going to chant the bija, one of the main bijas for the heart, hum, H-U-M, with a dot under the M and a straight line across the U, hum. Keep your energy in your feet while you do it, but be aware of your heart. Take a deep breath in. And deep breaths. Keep your energy in your feet while awareness in your heart. Release the hands. We're going to come down to our final pose, and it's an important part of yoga practice, and that is, of course, the shavasana or mritasana. So lay yourself down on your back nice and comfortably. Make sure you're warm. I don't know, not everyone is zooming in from the UK, and some people might be watching this on YouTube in the future if I ever get around to putting it on YouTube, which I hope to do. So you might not be in the UK, or but if you are, it's chilly. It's May in the UK, it's a bit chilly. So do put on warmer stuff and align yourself, right? So that means to say spacious and symmetrical. Makes a big difference to be spacious and symmetrical. Yajna is a Sanskrit word that means sacrifice. It's the name that's given to the sacrificial gestures that were common to ancient peoples, including the Vedic peoples, where they pour something into a fire, like, for example, soma, the mysterious milky drink. It is one of the favorite things of the gods, apparently. The gods love it. So you pour that in and the gods will come, and then you can praise them. And then while you're stroking their egos, you can ask them for something. Huh? So that's the paradigm. Now, how does that become yogic? Well, as we move through the timeline, we come to texts that represent a point in time where the Vedic peoples are meeting the peoples of the Magadha area, and their philosophies are intermingling. And so the Vedic peoples, to maintain the connection with their origins, with the sacrifice, change the sacrifice not into something physically done necessarily, with an actual fire, but symbolically done. You surrender yourself. And instead of the gods granting you wishes, eventually this paradigm comes to mean that you have the same powers, as that you become God. If you, in the tantric tradition, it said, only the goddess can worship the goddess, because she's the only one who's sort of worthy of doing it. The goddess just means the field, the interdependent field. If you use words to point to an experience of surrender, then it doesn't matter what those words are. Surrender.
We can feel parallels with the Jain tradition, where karma is seen to be particles, as if they were physical particles that stuck to you and made you heavy. When you give, when you surrender, when you let go, you're no longer compulsively following your patterns, habit patterns. Then you feel lighter and lighter. Give the muscles, give the bones. Our Vedic fire, our medium, our means of communicating with the field, with connecting to the field and all its inherent powers, is the breath. Give the body to the breath. Give the mind to the breath. So that we're not tardy, Ralph has Ralphed the end of the class. Ralph is meowed and he's doing it again, which means that for those of you that need to be on time, now's the time for toe wiggling and finger wiggling. But if you've got a bit longer, of course, highly recommend staying a bit longer. It's lovely to stay as long as it's natural to stay, and just come up when the body wants you to. But if you are finger wiggling and stretching out, then after bending the legs, you can roll onto your left side. Play as comfortably as you can there. Before rolling in your own time to your right side. And when you feel ready to come up, you can bring yourself up from the side. May the merit gained in acting thus go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. Om. Thanks so much for your time, gang.